my name's Susie Ventris-Field and I am the Chief Executive of the Welsh Centre for International Affairs. So I became the Chief Executive, officially in a few days, but I found out last week, so it's a new role. But I've been at the WCIA for about 5 years. I joined actually as a volunteer. I was working in North Wales and I started to volunteer remotely for the Wales International Development Hub, which was based at the Temple of Peace, and then got a role as Assistant Chief Executive, then Deputy Chief Executive, and have been here ever since, really. I was already absolutely certain that I wanted to work on international issues and international affairs. I'd spent, after university, I trained as a journalist, decided that I didn't necessarily want to be a journalist because I wasn't very good at observing. I wanted to get stuck in. So I went and did some overseas education work, first commercially in South Korea, and then I did some work in Eritrea with voluntary service overseas. And I came back from there fairly determined that I would have my career in international issues, international affairs or international development. And couldn't find something that exactly fit the bill when I came back to the UK. I only came back to the UK initially because I met my now husband in Eritrea and needed to go through the visa process and getting him safely out of the country. So I found myself looking for jobs that I was interested in, and the one that was most interesting was in North Wales with Chwaraeteg. So working in gender equality in Wales, but still on a really important global topic. And while I was there, I had a fantastic time working on equalities, but was very much keeping my eye open for international opportunities. And I did my master's degree in development management while I was there as well at the Open University. And then initially a job role came up with the Wales International Development Hub, and I thought, fantastic, this would be the perfect job for me. And I went for it. I didn't quite get it, but I volunteered for them straight after. So I got in touch and said, listen, I think the organisation's fantastic. It was the first I'd heard of them. I really want to be involved. Can I volunteer? And it was through that I got the opportunity. But I just think it's so important for us now. We can't pretend that we're in local areas and nothing else affects us. Everything that happens around the world has an impact on us here. And also what we do here has a massive impact around the world. And it's really important that people are aware of that and can make their decisions accordingly. So really thinking about, yes, I'm going shopping, but where do things come from? What am I buying? What's the impact of that? Thinking about refugees coming into the country. How can I make them feel welcome? Why have they come here? What's the challenges they're fleeing from? How might we as a country have contributed to some of those problems through our trade policies, through our historical policies, our military policies? And I think that that's so important that people are aware of that. And not everyone will share the same viewpoint on how to respond to that. They should at least have the information, the skills to understand the complexity of that, and then an opportunity to understand how they can make a difference. And that's really what we do here, and that's what I'm really passionate about, is that everyone can find their way through that information, can understand that it's not just hopeless. They haven't just got to sit back and let it happen. They can do something themselves, and we give them the tools for that, and then they can make a difference, whether it's in their community, in an organisation, or whether it's going overseas to do something. All of those are equally valuable, I think. Well, moving forward, we're looking at doing that in three main ways, and they're continuing traditions of what we've always done. So I think for me, the bedrock of what we do is global learning. So working with people, particularly with young people, but people of all ages, first of all, to get them interested in global issues. When we've talked about it in the office, we all talk about kind of seminal moments we've had. Something has happened to grab our interest. It might have been a news report, it might have been a trip overseas, it might have been someone coming to talk in the school, but something has happened to grab our interest. So we need to make sure people have the opportunity to have those moments where they get their interest grabbed.
So what was it for you?
For me, no, I've actually got a few ideas, but I think I always had a bit of an interest, but the real life-changing moment for me was I decided aged 18 that I was going to do a sort of an equivalent of a gap year. It was only 4 months. And I was from the Forest of Dean. It's quite a rural community. I have no idea where I got the idea that they even existed, if I'm honest, because no one else did it. My family hadn't travelled overseas, but not very far afield to Europe and things. But I was going to have a gap year. I was going to go to Africa somewhere, and that's what I was going to do. And sort of aged 18, I searched around and found one of these. Probably in hindsight, I'm not sure the full value of the gap year programs, but for me, I went over to Kenya for 4 months. I was teaching children. I shouldn't have been a teacher at that age, as I look back now, but actually for me it was so transformational because I just loved being somewhere else. I learned so much. I mean, I learned far more than I gave, I would say, in that circumstance as an 18-year-old teacher trying to, but actually it was so valuable, and just met some really interesting people and just thought, there's so much out here that I don't know about. It's so different to the perceptions that you get from just watching the news. And also, I mean, as I've travelled over the years, people everywhere, of course there are differences, but actually what really fundamentally motivates us is the same. And so you've always got things in common with people, and the things that are different are interesting rather than points to disagree about. And I love that about travelling, and I love that about living in other places.
And how do you sort of instill that passion that you've obviously got in other people?
So I think it's about finding ways to create that moments, and realistically it would be great if everyone could have a similar experience and go overseas, but actually that's not possible. But you can still get really transformational experiences. I mean, one of our projects now, Changemakers projects, we work on with Oxfam Cymru, where they get a sanctuary seeker speaking in school, and that's really just having someone with a different experience or a different perspective going and speaking can make a big difference. But one of the things I think that's really important is we then do give people an opportunity to do something with that information. I think you can make people aware of a topic like asylum, and then they're just like, that's terrible, I feel terrible, what can I do about it? We need to then work with people, say, well, okay, these are the kinds of things you could do to make a difference. These are the options. These are the things other people have done to make a difference, and support them to work together to do that. And so with young people, that's very much about giving them sort of the choices, the ideas, and giving them the space to do that. And that really follows through into what we then do in terms of global action in Wales, sort of locally but on global issues. There's already so many amazing groups across Wales. I think over 100 community links, we've got international development groups, we've got peace groups, sanctuary groups across Wales doing fantastic work already, but sometimes not having all of the capacity they need, or not always being able to have the resource to connect together or to recruit new younger volunteers coming in. And that's a gap that a lot of people speak about. You know, they need more people coming in, and that's where I think we can fit in supporting those people already doing fantastic stuff, connecting them with people, making sure they can work together to achieve more, really, and also celebrating what they do outside of Wales. You know, it's fantastic that Wales is the first fair trade nation. We hope very much Wales will be the first nation of sanctuary, and what a fantastic answer that is to the sort of hostile environment that's representing the UK as a whole. And I think where we can celebrate those achievements, that is a fantastic thing as well. And also in encouraging positive global partnerships. So through the work as a partner on Hub Cymru Africa, where we're supporting Wales Africa partnerships, but actually we'd like to go beyond that and support Wales World partnerships. International exchange opportunities, so working closely with organisations like UNA Exchange to support that kind of work, and to make the connection between young people coming out of school who are passionate, who have had an education which very soon will have ethical informed citizens of the world at its core as part of the new curriculum, making sure that as those people graduate they have somewhere to go, that they know there's an organisation in their community, in their area, that they can still be involved and carry that passion forward through their lives and have it influence their decision making and their workplaces. And I think that's another part of what we need to do as an organisation, is to make sure that, you know, public sector, private sector, third sector organisations and institutions have a culture that allows that global action, global awareness, and encourages it and is supportive of those kind of positive policies and practices that they can put in place as well. So there's a lot to do.
Amazing. And do you think the fact that all this great work, like the Temple of Peace, is a hub for that, do you think this building and what this building was set up to do you think that influences that, and are you aware of that in your day-to-day work?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Wales for Peace project in particular has deepened that perspective. It was very clear from when I came here that this is a very special place, and that the building itself was there for a reason, and that's important. It gives you a sense of purpose. But I think what the Wales for Peace project has done is not only to uncover more of the history of the temple itself, and there's such an inspiring set of stories there, but also similar stories from across Wales. And for me, if you're a young person in Wales and you're in a rural area, a bit like I grew up in the Forest of Dean, just outside of Wales, but rural area, and maybe a lot of people around you aren't always interested in some of the things that you're talking about or that you're interested in, and when you start to talk about global issues, people don't connect. Actually, going and seeing some of the stories of people from your area who have done amazing things on international issues, and I mean from the project you can really find examples from across Wales, serves as such a source of inspiration. And when I talk about seminal moments and getting people inspired, I think those stories have such power to inspire people, like the Greenham Common stories, the sanctuary stories right back to the Belgian refugees. I mean, that really gives people something to look back on and say, this isn't new, this isn't something that's new to now, we're not suddenly having these problems. It's been going back years, and all through that time people have been campaigning and fighting to make the world a better place. And I think for me the history gives us that inspiration. The temple's history and what it was built to represent, and also how it's changed over the years. I mean, you know, it's had different groups in here, different charities, different people in charge making different decisions, but actually the fundamental purpose has been the same, is to engage people in international issues and to recognise that Wales needs a voice in those issues, and people from Wales can have a voice in those issues. And I think it just serves as a real bedrock and inspiration, so that we can say, listen, we've had this fantastic, in Wales for Peace case, 100 years of internationalism. Let's see what we can do for the next 100 years to make even more of an impact.
So the Temple of Peace, I believe from having talked to Emma, it's the only Temple of Peace in the whole world. I know that other ones were planned, but what does that mean to you, and how do you describe the Temple of Peace to other people?
I think what it means, it's much like some of the other examples we've talked about. Wales is a small nation, but it has the potential to have a real impact about some of the exciting things it's done. First nation to have a Temple of Peace, I mean, that's an exciting thing. First nation to be a fair trade nation, first nation to be a nation of sanctuary, the support for Wales-Africa community links. There's a lot of activity in Wales, which the Temple is a part of that history, that I think we should absolutely be shouting out about around the world. In terms of what it means, I think in terms of how I describe it to people, I don't describe it as a centre for peace, actually, because I think although our name is Welsh Centre for International Affairs, I think it is important that we think about Wales as a whole. But actually having this building as a place that we're based, with the history that sits behind it, gives us a sense of, you know, the journey that we've been on. You know, we've come from after the First World War, a period of hope, building of the Temple of Peace, and then straight into the Second World War, where really that hope was, you know, it collapsed, and then from them building again. And I think that the building gives us a symbol of that, and although it's in Cardiff and we're in Cardiff, actually that symbol has relevance around Wales, because although the building's here, the activity and work towards internationalism was across Wales. And I think for me it's about making sure that we're here and we have the building, we protect this, and we build on it, but we also make sure that people feel that they can connect to it from the different parts of Wales, and that they feel that our work is relevant to them wherever they are as well.
Do you have a favourite place or part of the building? Where do you go when you need to reflect?
I have two favourite parts of the building. One is the council chamber, which is the old library, which I love books anyway, but I love to be in that room. It just gives it, for me, it's the room that feels like it gives the most sense of the history, but also being surrounded by books is always a fantastic place for me to be. So I love it in there, and I love having meetings in there, because I think when people come into the council chamber, they have a real sense that, oh, this is an important place, this is somewhere that important decisions have been made, and I'm now part of that. My other favourite place, I think, is the crypt, because the atmosphere in the room, and that's a place where you get a sense of the kind of remembering loss to build peace part of the building, particularly when the book is in its place in that room. The sound in there it's quite difficult to describe, but it's got a certain quality, and being down there on your own, I think, has quite an impact and does really encourage you to remember the loss that led to the kind of desire to build something from that loss. And I think that's something that's really important for us to remember. And actually the Wales for Peace project has done a fantastic job of exploring that kind of remembering loss, but also then what you can do for that, what you can do from that, and what you can build from that. And so the crypt reminds me of that. But I wouldn't sit there and do any work, because it's definitely too echoey.
And looking at sort of wow moments, either with events or visitors, people who've been here and spoken, do you have examples of?
My first example was as a volunteer, so probably mentioned by others, but when I was volunteering in North Wales, when Desmond Tutu visited, I was invited as a volunteer to Mid Wales to meet him on his tour, and that was a pretty special moment. And it was really exciting to be invited to do that as a volunteer. I think other wow moments for me, they've been big and small things. So one of the first things I was tasked with doing was creating an event to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the Temple of Peace, and we ran a Peace 75 event and competition, and it was the first event in the temple, I think, in a long time that had been more of a festival. So we'd had a lot of lectures and debates, and so that for me was a really exciting moment, a really exciting day, where we brought people from across sort of Cardiff to come together and celebrate the Temple of Peace. But lots of children came along, and it was really buzzy, and so that was a really nice thing to be engaging such young people on that day. Other wow moments have been smaller ones, but where when I came we had kind of occasional volunteers, and one of the things I did was to introduce a volunteer programme, and I mean, we've had 500 plus volunteers since then. But really exciting moments for me are when volunteers finish their placements and then go away, and then a few months later they'll write to me and they say, well, I've got a job in the third sector, or I've got a job in international issues, or I've got a job in the Welsh Government, or I've got, and it's because of my time volunteering with the WCIA that I've got that, or I've joined a campaign, or so where they've come from here and they've gone off to do something else, and they're coming back and telling us it's because of what they did here, and that for me is always a really good moment. And I think a couple of others that stand out for me. One was a very spontaneous event, which was when Jo Cox was murdered. We had various organisations in the corridor, and then also people who were aware of us asked us to come together and hold an event, and that was just, people came together quite spontaneously in a way that was, celebrating her life and celebrating the messages of More in Common, and I felt like that was quite powerful because it was spontaneous and because so lany people came together. And then I think more recently I was visiting the Llangollen International Festival, and Craig Owens, the head of Wales for Peace, gave a speech where he kind of summed up the story of Wales for Peace, and as well as being a very powerful speech, it just brought together, in my mind, obviously we've been working on that project for several years, it's been a lot of work, it's been really interesting, but it's been a lot of hard work for the team. It kind of brought all that together and all of the inspiration from that, and I felt that that's why we've done this project. It's really been worth it. It's brought together these amazing projects and these amazing stories, and that's going to live on as a legacy for a long time beyond, and that's something that's been, I think, very powerful as well.
You're the new director. What do you think you bring? I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about the fact that you're the first woman, whether that is significant or...
I mean, I think what I bring as the new chief executive is a sense of passion of where we've come from, and a real excitement about taking us forward for the next 5 years. And for me, in the year that the Wales for Peace project will draw to a close at the end of the year, actually we've been celebrating this last 100 years of internationalism, and for me it's about taking that forward for the next 100 years. And I think what I will bring is the enthusiasm for that. I'll bring new partnerships, strengthen our global learning programme again. We've got a new curriculum coming, and it's a perfect opportunity for us to do more work there. And I think it is exciting that the Centre's got a female chief executive for the first time. I think that we've had, back in the 70s, if you look back then, it was quite a male-dominated organisation. Even moving on into the 80s and 90s, we had a less diverse board of trustees. And it's just a world different to where we are now, sort of first female chief executive, but also an incredibly diverse and skilled board of trustees, with people from lots of different backgrounds, people from different professions, and it really strengthens us as an organisation. And I think for me moving forward, I've got an incredible team that I'm working with and an incredible board of trustees, and a lot of what I'll be doing is leveraging those skills so that we can achieve even more for the next 10, 15, 20, 100, 200 years into the future.
So just to finish, it's the 80th anniversary of the Temple of Peace. What would you like to say to the Temple of Peace?
I'd like to say well done for being a fantastic symbol of peace in Wales, and I would like to see the temple much more open and used. It's quite exciting for us, I think, because Cardiff University have bought the building. It will, as with their other buildings, it will become publicly accessible again, and that people will come and see the history and be inspired by it, and that it continues to be a source of inspiration for generations to come.